All right, so disclaimer, I'm pretty jet lagged. How many of you have experience in building communities? Just sweet, okay. So I'm Marguerite deCourcelle. I'm also known as Coin Artist on Twitter. I got my start in the crypto space in 2012 by using my gaming GPUs to mine Litecoin and Bitcoin. I started working on the Decred project back in 2016 and helped build that community from 50 people to an upwards of 50,000. I became the head of marketing over 2016, 2017. I'm now the CEO of Blockade Games, which is a blockchain game studio. We've built a few different projects, and currently we're working on Neon District, which is a cyberpunk RPG. I officially started Blockade in 2018, but I think from this talk you'll see the history of the community and the company go much further back than that. So as we know, building great communities is pretty hard, but building a legendary community is even harder. You might be familiar with using communities as for marketing metrics, if anything like people on a newsletter that don't have any place to interact, or if you have people in a public Discord or a Slack channel, but there's not much conversation happening. If you've seen a community where community members aren't organically engaging with each other or recruiting new members. The relationship with your community is one-directional. I think a lot of people have seen that, where it's only community members consuming and very few back and forth feedback loop. So in order to build a legendary community, you must think about the community as being more than a marketing metric. And a lot of times we build our communities with intention. So we look for shared stories and authentic origins. So the foundation of any legendary community will have this in common. And a healthy community should work to support what we call a meta community. So I'm breaking up this discussion into 3 different parts: starting a community, building a community, and supporting the meta community. I'm going to tell you stories about how Blockade Games has rolled into community building as a core ethos of Blockade Games. So you can't build a community by trying to build a community. That's not usually how people congregate. And what I mean by this is you have to have a strong story, a strong origin story in which people have that shared bonding moment. And this is something that we're calling the Genesis event. So in creating this Genesis event, it can be an individual or a group of people, but usually there's an intersection of shared interest. You could be, for example, like myself. I am interested in technology and Bitcoin, art, fine art, and then also gaming, obviously. Yeah. So a good example of this so this is me. So it was a natural progression for me to go from, Bitcoin, trying to understand the interaction of these different interests I had. So originally I was thinking about how can art benefit from Bitcoin and gaming benefit from all these different technologies. And the Bitcoin community is a really good example of a shared origin story, right? Satoshi Nakamoto in the white paper, and the congregation of different individuals, had core libertarian ideals in the beginning. Boop. So in 2014, I created my first crypto puzzle, and I did it I recruited family to help, and it was showing the intersection of those 3 different areas I was talking about: Bitcoin, fine art, and gaming. I wanted to see if I could introduce a merit-based approach to allowing people to withdraw money from an experience, since Bitcoin was permissionless. It didn't require a third party for that transaction to be made. So I wanted to see this idea in the wild. Was inspired by Ready Player One, and my family and I were working ahead, usually just a few hours ahead of the gamers at the time, and it became the most viral thread on Bitcoin Talk, which is Satoshi's original forum, for 2 months. And I was kind of, my background being fine art and then creative technology, I was blown away by that reception. So from that then, I wanted to do a second puzzle after that first one had been so successful. But I wanted to do something more unique. So this was my second puzzle in which I turned a private key. If you know how a private key can convert into a QR code, but that same idea you can make more abstract and turn it into just visual data. So those flames around the border are a private key. And I didn't know how to do that script, but I found an engineer, artist, developer to help me, and he had heard about the first puzzle, so he was on board for this next experience. He's actually still a part of Blockade today. And we turned this out, and it took 3 years for someone to solve it. I really thought I made a mistake, but anyway, so the community that gathered around this piece over the course of those years, I kept releasing works into, and they started picking up, and that's how I met the CTO of Blockade Games, actually, was through these puzzles, and we started building these experiences together. So, oh my gosh. So in order to keep a community, you have to keep collaborating and creating together. And that was that shared love for the adventure that we were building. It was kind of like this concept of a sword in the stone adventure, and you can pull the value out of the thing that's been created. So when we launched Blockade, we had this community already there, and I already had a sense of the vision. So that foundation had been laid. So as we continue with Blockade and do our different projects, like we've done with Pineapple Arcade, Plasma Bears, Neon District, they were all on board with this shared vision of where we're going with Blockade. Pineapple Arcade is named after a contributor, if you've heard of the Pineapple Fund. He donated to us to do this puzzle development, community education, and then, and then Plasma Bears was a project we did to prove out our platform that we're building with Neon District, but it's a proof of concept, free-to-play game, username, password. You're minting NFTs as you're playing. It's a very simple game where you're basically just collecting bear parts, assembling a bear, taking them on text adventures to collect more bear parts, and then leveling them up. At the time, we were working on Neon District, so we didn't have all the resources to spin up another dev team and build Plasma Bears. So our community came and helped. Our community came in and helped us finish this project out. So yeah, I guess once we did those bottlenecks, we actually hired directly from the community to continue on to Blockade after Plasma Bears. It's a really great way to recruit talent when you engage directly, and they also have a shared culture already. So recognizing that our contributors are such a core part of Blockade, when we launched Neon District's founder sale, which was basically an opportunity to onboard these community members to be our pre-alpha test players. They got founders keys for $5, and today, like, the cheapest version of this key is sold for at least $30, and then the highest ones are selling for thousands of dollars. They've all been minted, so the only way to become a founder, basically, of Blockade is to buy one from a current founder, and people aren't really that willing to sell them. So after the founder sale, we started something called the Founders Program, which it's a forum in which these community members that all have the keys, gives them access to this private forum, and also to the weekly builds that we release to get the feedback. And they've been competing in design competitions, the story, the lore, even, for example, well, yeah, okay, I'll get there. Right, so the meta community, I guess I'll just roll into this. So with Plasma Bears, we did, as an example of community building to grow, we worked with a company called Hero, and then with Loom Network, if you guys are familiar with Loom. And with our platform, we can airdrop via email or social media. So we made these different bears in which they airdropped to I think Hero at the time had something like 50,000 email subscribers. they emailed them all of these plasma bears. And once they claimed them, made a username, password, they were now our community members. So leveraging that free-to-play model and then also working with other companies to kind of create this defensible meta community is something that we're really excited about at Blockade. And another example of the meta community is the boss auction we had for Season 0. The boss, known as Baus, was sold for $25,000 to a game developer. And when we asked him, why did you spend this much money on this character, which was, I think, one of the top 10 most expensive game items ever sold in history. He said he was really excited about blockchain interoperability and the idea of building a metagame around the boss, allowing community members to rent him and have this experience of playing with a celebrity asset. So the metagame of blockchain is very strong, and that's something that by allowing community to build and participate, you can even encourage further. So my key takeaways from this talk is that you need to have an authentic origin in which you start your community and grow it from, because that's where people really share and bond. And it's the thing that keeps the community in line as it grows, because as it continues to grow, it will you'll get more and more different people. And if you have that ethos that roots all the way back to the beginning, then you'll always be able to make those decisions and carry the torch forward with your intent and what you meant to do from the beginning. Nurture the culture. We allow our community to make memes. I know Axie does this really well too, Axie Infinity. Let your community shine and give them recognition because they're the ones that really develop the culture, and then you need to reinforce it. And take every opportunity to support the meta community. So at Blockade, we're very supportive of every game company that's trying in the blockchain space, that's trying to do this, because it's very hard to have a game studio, and adding this new experimental layer with blockchain has made it, it's pretty chaotic. So support each other and keep the communities healthy and not toxic. All right. So you're welcome to join our Discord, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.